Good morning. I've been informed that we are live. We have audio and everything is okay, except no one will be able to see us. So the live stream is working. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 9:37. Thank you for your patience. So I do invite the public to join us, even though it's only going to be audio. You can come in person to the community center located at 13168 Ilderton Road in Ilderton. And I'll start with the land acknowledgement. The municipality of Middlesex Center recognizes that we're gathering on the traditional lands and territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenape peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Our neighboring First Nations communities, which will continue to live as sovereign nations, include the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. There are no additions to the council agenda, but before we move on, I'm going to turn to the CAO. There are a couple of announcements.
Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the chair to members of council, I'm very happy to announce this morning and to bring to council and the public's attention that we've recently completed the recruitment of 2 new managers to the organization. Stephanie Bergman is our new manager of planning and development, and she's in the very back, sitting with Andrew. And Angela Jones is our manager of human resources, and Angela is sitting at the end of the table with our senior team. So for those of you, I hope you get to know Stephanie and Angela. They're key resources to the organization, and we look forward to working with them. So welcome.
Thank you, and we're certainly glad to have you on board. Now, I'm going to look to council. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, then we can move to delegations, presentations, and petitions. The first presentation today is from the St. Clair Regional Conservation Authority, and they're going to be speaking with respect to the potential removal of the Coldstream Dam. I have Ken Phillips, Greg Wilcox, and Gurush Sankar, who are here in attendance and will be providing the updates to us. If you'd like to come forward and sit at the desk there, you won't be on the screen, but we'll be able to hear you. So the floor is, I'm going to turn mine off. You can turn yours on, and the floor is yours when you're ready.
Hello, everyone. You can hear me on here fine? Okay, so I hadn't prepared a presentation. Just the quick update is we went through this process of having a dam decommissioning study to look at the feasibility of removing 2 dams, both on the Sydenham River on the East Branch. So one is the Coldstream Dam and one is the Head Street Dam in Strathroy. So we've gone through that process to look at the feasibility, the costing, the environmental benefit, and kind of what the need would be and what the desire would be from our municipal partners in doing those, proceeding with either removals or further study to investigate. So for the Coldstream Dam, there was a number of options we looked at. You can see them in the summary report, which I think is a little easier to follow than the full report. So we started with a do nothing option, which isn't necessarily preferred, but it's a requirement, as this study would form the basis of a class environmental assessment if we would move further, and do nothing is a required option to review. We also looked at, a full removal in 1 year, a phased in removal over multiple years, a partial removal, and some other options with bypassing the dam to create a new either temporary or permanent bypass channel. We've also had to review sediment removal options. That has become one of the big challenges with dam removal. A number of years ago, a lot of dams were coming out. There wasn't the same emphasis on managing that sediment. Now it's more likely that we would have to do some form of sediment management, which really adds to the costing of these projects. So those are the options we reviewed. There's a costing table. We also, highlighted some of the key reasons we would look at a dam removal. So on top of the fact that every dam's going to have a lifespan, so at some point it's going to hit end of life and it's going to need to be either replaced or removed. Additionally, we looked at the environmental impact. So the Sydenham River is one of, I believe, 13 key biodiversity areas in Canada. It has over 80 species of fish, over 30 species of mussel, and a variety of other wildlife that use that river system. And there are a lot of negative impacts from dams and impoundments. So we have altered sediment transport. We really have a significant alteration to thermal regime. So these two dams, we've been monitoring the thermal, and we have about a 3-degree temperature increase in the summer from the water coming in to the water going out. So we're really increasing the temperatures in the headwaters of the Sydenham, which impacts the wildlife that can use it. We have barriers to fish passage, and which also impacts our mussel distribution. Freshwater mussels, of which the Sydenham River is the most diverse river in Canada. They use fish species as a host to distribute their young. They attach to the fish, and that's how they move through the river. So again, a dam is a barrier to the distribution and the movement of mussels as well as fish. And there are a considerable number of species at risk, both mussels and fish in the system. So there's a whole suite of negative impacts to the environment by having these dams. Additionally, there's some risk to removing a dam environmentally with species at risk movement, and that if we don't control that sediment, the potential impacts of releasing so much sediment downstream at one time. So that's all the different factors we're looking at in the study. And we're seeking kind of some input from our municipal partners to see how and if they would wish us to pursue this further with further studies or start looking at dam removal. The municipalities would be involved both through the Class EA consultation process, as well as we would need financial support from our municipal partners if we were looking at pursuing dam removal.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to look to council to see if there are questions. I'll start with Deputy Mayor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just, in the report, we read that, that you have to be careful if you take the dam out, the sudden rush of water causes flooding. But if the dam's not there, and obviously with all the rain we've been getting, I see the Oxbow drain running full after an inch of rain. Would this create a problem downstream for landowners if we get a lot of heavy rain and there's no dam there to retain some of the water and all of this goes right down the river? Is that going to cause problems?
So we've looked at flooding impacts for both the dams. Both of these dams were built not for flood control. Both were built purely for recreational purpose. And so when you look at both dams, they both sit at capacity all the time. There's no operating, like we can't lower the water in the fall to prepare for spring flooding. They're sitting at capacity all the time. So basically the water in is the water out. They're not functioning for flood control right now. And when the modeling was done by the consultant, they didn't find any impacts pre or post removal to flooding upstream or down.
Councillor Arce.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I got quite a few questions, so maybe if you let the rest of the councillors go first, and that way I won't hog anyone's time.
Yeah, and maybe somebody asked and answered. Okay, I saw both of you want to ask. I'll start with you, Councillor Burrs, and then go ahead, Councillor Kate after.
Okay, so you're recommending, it looks like dam removal. You've explained that they are built for recreation. I don't see a lot of recreational use there. So the sediment is basically increasing all the time. Right? So it looks like it's in rough shape. When do we need to pull it out? Like, everything for us, well, not everything, but a large part of it is what's the cost of it. So I eyeball pulling out the whole dam at one time, and you were suggesting you don't have to deal with the sediment. It actually flushes itself downstream. Maybe you can talk to that. I don't see how that happens. That's like a big mudslide moving down. So what is the potential cost of full dam removal? If we went in and took the dam out, and you suggested WECI funding, which has to be, that's a provincial program for this kind of thing. That has to be completed in a year, right, to get the funding? Yeah, you can't spread it over multiple years. So I saw 1.8 million for full dam removal. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm presuming a large percentage, WECI funding would be minimal. I can't see it being a ton of money. So first of all, when's the optimum time to do this? Like, when should we start doing it? It's deteriorating now. Um, Can you concur with what I said? That you gave us a few options there, but are you recommending full dam removal, partial dam removal, no sediment treatment? Also, the sediment is not polluted. Let me no heavy metals, phosphorus is below provincial standards. Anyway, have I asked a question in there?
I'll see what I can do. So at this point, we haven't narrowed down a preferred option, and part of that is because it would require more consultation with the agencies. So DFO, MNRF, there needs to be some consult. So historically, a lot of these were removed in a way where you phased it either 1 year or multiple years, but just a phased removal of the structure. And then you allowed some sediment to wash downstream. The reality is they may or may not permit that anymore. It's getting more stringent all the time. So as far as the timeline of when does it need to be done, the dam in its current state is actually in reasonable shape for the age of the structure. It can survive longer, but at some point it's going to hit end of life, and every year more sediment accumulates and costs of construction, everything increases. So there's no urgent need, as in it's not failing today, but every year we wait, generally the cost of removal is going to keep climbing because we're going to have more and more sediment accumulated. As far as the costing, you're right, there's options that are $1 million to 1.8 for just a straight removal and allowing the sediment to go downstream. We don't know for sure if that's a viable option until you start the process and consult more with the agencies. It's very hard to get a firm answer out of those agencies right now as to whether they would permit those options until we get into the process. The cost really jumps if you have to do more significant sediment management.
Just as a quick follow on, then it looks like we're going to be asking those agencies, like, we can do it construction wise, but will they allow us to do certain things, correct?
Correct.
So this is going to take some time.
This will not, nothing would happen quickly. We would need to be clear that this is where we've come with a preliminary study. There would still need to be a class environmental assessment with stakeholder and public consultation prior to moving forward with any option. That would be mandatory for the Conservation Authority to complete that study. But if there's no interest, we have to confirm there's interest from the municipal partners before we would look to proceed with that process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Greg. I have spinning head on all of this for what is the right thing to do. Obviously, the cost. But let's for a moment put the cost aside. It still has a longer lifespan. And you just made a statement about the Sydenham River is the most, did you say diverse? The most.
For mussel species, it's the most diverse in the country.
Yeah, and so it's a very important, river all along. And, the part that I read about the invasive species and washing things down, it almost makes it seem like this could potentially be more harm than good. And if it still has the life cycle, I get the increased costs over time, but everything does, versus the damage that could potentially be done. So I'm not sure on the options. Maybe it is just to leave it for now, but again, not based on we don't want to spend the money, but based on. But that's where I'm really hoping that staff and Rob can, do their part in having a look at this as well. And I guess some of these things you mentioned there would need to be an EA study done, correct? Some of those things would, I'm sure, certainly be answered during that period of time. So just some of my random thoughts on not sure on this. Thank you. Thank you for coming today, guys.
Thank you. Councillor Harpino, if you'd like to comment.
Through the mayor to Greg, I don't know if you can answer this question or even if it's relevant, but there's an awful lot of algae bloom on the conservation on the pond as it stands. And yet, when it was first installed, there was a beach there, and kids would go in and out. So, considering that the Sydenham is a diverse river, how did this pollution happen? Because nobody goes in the water anymore. And I'm just wondering, is that going to change things, or is it just because of the sediment washing down that it's just not usable anymore?
Yeah, so as far as the algae blooms, that's going to be related to the sediment that's accumulating, and included in that sediment is going to be phosphorus and nutrients that are coming downstream and settling out in that pond instead of washing through. And because again, as that reservoir shallows, it's heating faster, so we're getting a warmer environment with more nutrients, and we're seeing those algae blooms. They don't happen to there's a picture of a really bad one from a couple of years ago. They don't happen to that extent every year, but it's likely going to be more frequent because we're accumulating those nutrients, and it's a very warm environment the shallower it gets.
And Councillor Arts.
Through your Madam Mayor to Greg, currently there's a functional valve controls. Well, it's non-functional, a valve control. How much would it cost to fix that? And if it was operational, can you do a slow drain off the lake?
I might need Girish to help answer that question.
Thank you. This is Girish from the Conservation Authority. The valve has not been in operation for the last 25 to 30 years. We have applied for WECI funding this year to investigate the feasibility of operation of the valve. Based on the previous inspections that we have done, it was deemed not functional and it's been damaged. So we don't know how much it'll take to restore it to working condition, but that's the study that we're undertaking as a part of, again, we have applied for the WECI funding this year. So if we are successful in getting the grant, we will move ahead with investigating what it'll take to get the valve operation.
Because that would be the most logical way to reduce the amount of sediment leaving and if you do say you lower the level down, can you get to a point where there's a big hole there? Can you just get a dozer in there and push the sediment away from where the main water course is? Is that possible?
It is not truly, because there could be some environmental disadvantages when we do that. We will be pushing some sediment out in downstream. The valve itself, it was designed to just convey flows and it will not take care of any sediment. Even if it does, it's going to be very, very minimal sediment transport downstream. We still need to investigate the quality of the sediments. We need to do some contaminant analysis to make sure that whatever sediment management options we come up with is in line with the regulation 406/19. So at this point, it is not possible to be able to move some of the sediment out of the system from upstream.
Okay, next question. In the report too, it says upstream to the left or downstream to the left. So when you say that, am I looking upstream and my left is this, my right's that? I was trying to figure out, I think I know what you're talking about, but it got confusing because then it was downstream left and downstream right, and then it was upstream left. So do you point upstream when you're saying that, or which way do you point when you're saying that reports?
The convention in normal hydrology and hydraulics is usually looking downstream. So it's relative to you standing upstream and looking at it downstream. So our right is relative to that.
Okay. And personally, I like option 5, where you leave some of the structure and step it, and then in the lake, you create some ponds and a wildlife system. But say you do all these reports and you've got it good to go. How long can you sit on that report? Because sometimes on council two, you'll do the studies and you'll have everything ready to go and you're just waiting for a government grant to come out. So like, if you had everything ready to go, like if you did you have a 5-year window, seeing that your sediment's only accumulating at a centimeter a year?
Yes, we will have the time, we will have 5 years or 10 years to make a decision unless the conditions have not changed. If the conditions remain as is, then we will have some time to deal with the remediation.
Because it takes so long to go through the approval process, probably take you 3 or 4 years just to get approval. And if you figure you got 20 years, good years left in the dam, by the time you get everything done, you're getting close to the end of the structure anyways, correct?
Absolutely. Typically, decommissioning studies that have happened in Ontario has taken over 5 to 10 years, depending on funding, approvals, studies that are required to commission the removal process. So 5 to 10 years is very realistic in terms of an estimate.
Okay, and what would the cost split between us? Is there a formula between the municipality and the conservation authority?
That is something I have to revert back to the office, but typically it's funding driven, these initiatives. So WECI, as it was alluded to, is 50-50. We can continue to explore the WECI dollars, but there are other funding grants as well that could be 100% towards such removal works. Normally, from an estimation standpoint, if you were to look at how much the municipality would contribute, I think 50% would be a good start, just in terms of estimation.
And if you had a really, really dry August and the lake dropped a foot below the top of the dam, the steel is quite a bit higher than, you just couldn't go in there with a pair of plasma cutter and cut the steel down to start lowering it. You can't do that without permission either, can you?
We can consider that as an option if we can throw that question back to the consultant that's been working on if that can be achieved in some way, shape, or form. But it's a question that we need to ask the consultant. But we still need all the permits. We still need to consult. We still need an EA process before we get that completed.
Okay, thank you.
I have a follow-on from Councillor Bruce.
Just for clarification, so you said our contribution might be 50%, but that's after other grants come in. Okay, thank you.
So Kate's.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Garif. So just to understand the 50% of what, because if we pay a levy of 2% to you already, so is it not 2%, or what's the difference between that versus this project?
This is a special project, so it will be classified in a different way. So special capital projects is what this will fall under. So it's just project driven and nothing to do with the levy portion of it.
So will it only be us as the municipality because it's here? So like the same situation is happening in Strathroy, they'll only be involved in that one, and there's no other people that'll be paying part of that too?
That is correct. So if we were to start exploring similar options for the Head Street Dam in Strathroy, then we will be approaching the municipality of Strathroy for their contribution, how they want to proceed with the funding portion of removal. Versus here, we are approaching you to help us with the path forward.
Okay, thank you for the presentation, the questions, early days. So we've got a lot of work to do still. So at this point, we do have a motion that the presentation from the St. Clair Regional Conservation Authority regarding the potential move of the Cold Stream Dam be received for information, and that staff be directed to prepare a report outlining recommended options to proceed with the potential removal of this Cold Stream Dam. Could I have a mover, please? And a seconder, Councillor Cates and Councillor Arts. Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you for all the work. I guess we'll be seeing more of you down the road. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having us.
All right, moving on to our next delegation. We have the Middlesex Federation of Agriculture, and they're going to be doing an update presentation to us. I know you're not Ruth. I don't. We have Patrick. Okay, Patrick, and you can introduce your counterpart when you're ready. Go ahead and make your presentation.
Good morning, I'm Patrick Berkeley. I'm president of Middlesex Federation, and yes, this isn't Ruth beside me. She sends her regrets, but this is our past president, Jason O'Neill.
We just wanted to come in today, seeing as this is Local Food Week, and we wanted to give an update on what we've been doing. There's 2,518 farms across Middlesex County. We represent about 1,950 of them. The average farm size in Middlesex County is 250 acres. The Middlesex agriculture contributes 28,715 jobs in the area and produces 1.3 billion in farm cash receipts per year. 56.4% of farms in the county are considered small farms with growth revenue of under $100,000 per year. And Patrick?
Yeah. So I'm going to try to put together, what's the message that we want to share. I think that the key message that we want to share is that agriculture is unique, and that idea kind of came out of our working with the OFA and their Policy Advisory Council. We'd learned that there was in around the Toronto area that agriculture was being treated as industrial, and they were getting assessed stormwater management fees, which kind of goes to the point of, when we're farming the land, we're not covering the farm land surface with hard surfaces. It's water that's being absorbed and stored in the soil. And so I think, the important aspect to, consider with agriculture is that it's working with the natural resources around it, differently than a lot of the industrial. And so I think it's important to not just start lumping agriculture into, industrial, because it functions so much differently. Thankfully, in this part of the province, that hasn't been an issue yet, but it's one of those things that, if I look out on the horizon, I think it's something to be watchful of. And one of the interesting things of working through that issue around the Toronto area was that some of the councillors didn't necessarily even realize what was going on per se. It was something that came in with the reports from the consultants that had been hired. And, obviously there are so many different things that council's doing, that you have to delegate some of that responsibility out to dive into things. But it is interesting to see how certain things can slip in. And I guess I think that's part of what our job is as, representatives of agriculture, is to, try and look and see things that maybe, not everyone can see, but that's, part of our experience. I think, as far as what our mission is, to promote that idea is, how do we tell the story of agriculture? And some of the things we've been doing has been, we are continuing to fund the Food for the Future radio show and podcast that Peggy O'Neill does. We have, with the help of Middlesex County, got field signs that show what our crops are, and hopefully we'll get them out in better time this year. We've also been sponsoring some farm and food care tours. So there's a culinary guide that we're working on now to help bring Fanshawe culinary students out to the farm. And we are one of the sponsors in partnership with a lot of the other local federations into an agricultural section of the new Children's Museum. The, at the OFA, we had a Federation Forum thing, which was a gathering of the 53 local federations like ourselves. And, you know, one of the interesting things that did pop out there was the unanimity of the concern among all 53 of land use. Like that seemed to be the primary point. You know, you know, and the phrase that I think kept coming up was the up, not out, to try and make better use of what we've got before we need to try it and expand. I don't know where this thought came from per se, but you know, agriculture at the moment can't financially compete with industrial development, with residential development. And I guess the way I started to wonder about that is, what would the world look like if agriculture could financially compete with development? And I don't really want to, I don't like what I think the world would look like there. And so I think, you know, the preservation of agriculture is about preserving, you know, the ease and accessibility of food that we've got today. And so, yeah, I think that's about where we're at, but we're very happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to look to council then. I'll start with Deputy Mayor Brennan again.
Just looking for a comment from you gentlemen. Our CEO sent us out a report, a newsletter that there's a company out there buying farms and renting them back to farmers, and they own about 177 farms. A lot of them up around New Liskert in that area, and they buy these farms and maintain and hold on to them and rent them back to the farmers. How do you see that going forward? The main reason for this was that small farms can't afford to buy more farms, so they're looking at this as an alternative. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, that particular company, one benefit of them at least is that they are Canadian owned and that their profits are staying in Canada. So I think that's less of a concern than the international purchasers, which is also going on. Ideally, obviously, it would be best for farmers to own the farmland. Any farmer knows, I'm sure Councillor Arts can justify and agree with me, that any farmer, the land they own will produce the most, because you have the stability and you can make the investment in it. There's a lot of farms around that are rented and they change owners, they change operators every few years. That's obviously not as ideal as owning land, but it's also just with the cost and the size of the operations these days, it's not practical to expect anyone to own all the land they operate. But I think that one thing we would certainly support would be trying to encourage at least having Canadian ownership of Canadian farms.
I had Councillor Heffernan next.
Yes, I wonder if you could ask me, or if I could ask you, sorry. Okay, so last year, I think it was suggested that about 315 acres in Ontario per year are going to development. Do you have any idea of what that would be for Ontario this year, or even just Middlesex County?
Yes, it's based on from 2 censuses ago to the most previous census. On average, we lost 319 acres a day, and that's in Ontario net. So any new land that's being cleared, perhaps say in the north in the Great Clay Belt, that's already canceled out. We are reduced by 319 acres a day, every day, and that at that rate we would have no farmland left in 100 years. I think Middlesex County is probably not as bad as the GTA, but also a lot of the data that we've been getting is we expect in the next census that number is going to be higher than 319 for the current time frame that we're in. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it answers that question, but I have another one too. Are there any areas that you're aware of where they don't allow, or at least make sure that the house, if a house is built, like right around here, what we're seeing is we've got bare land. Somebody buys it, obviously not a farmer, and they put a big estate house at the back of the property, using up a lot of acres. And then at the end of the day, in 10, 20 years, they want to sell. It's very costly, like a young farmer cannot buy it. Is there any areas in Ontario that you've run across this where they've solved that issue? Like, is it a zoning change or like, I don't know if you can answer these questions, but have you ever seen or heard of anything that kind of helps that?
No, I haven't seen anything like that. But that definitely is a situation. I can think of one place I drove by where there was a very big house at the back of the property and a winding laneway that makes it harder to farm on either side. But yeah, no one's got any good solutions that we know of yet, unfortunately. If we hear any, we'll come and let you know.
I think one thing would be maintaining larger farm sizes. You largely see that on the 30 and 50 acre properties. That's not as so much on the 100 acre farms. I don't know if that would be something maybe the building department could do if somebody puts in an application for a residence and all of a sudden, like, I know you don't want to infringe on people and tell them what to do on their property, but also if you can look at it and be like, this is a 50 acre farm that's all workable acres. We think you're going to take 20 acres out of production between your laneway going to the back and this. Maybe there's something that could be done to make it more efficient, but it's a slippery slope. We fully understand that. Site plan approval. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Through your Madam Mayor, sitting on council, I see a lot of groups come up and for agriculture, and I call them fair weather friends. They just use this when it's convenient. So it's nice to see someone that's actually genuinely for agriculture. So thank you.
I don't see any more hands, so I'll just say my thanks too for taking time and giving us an update. It's always good to Crispin has come some years, and I say you've got lots of nice summary documents now that are easy to hang on to and hand out to people when they have questions. So appreciate your time and hope summer's good to you. Alrighty.
Thanks.
Okay, so now we can move on to the adoption of the minutes. We have a motion before us that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 22nd of May, 2024 be adopted as printed. I need a mover, please, and a seconder. Councillor Burrs and Councillor Shipley, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we've got 6 items on the consent agenda. Typically, we receive these as one motion, but is there anything anyone wants pulled here or talk to? Okay, Councillor Burrs.
We can just make a comment about item 7.6. Okay, that's the, you want me to comment on it now, Your Worship, or? Yeah, this is the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. I think we should talk about it. We're not the biggest municipality, but we've won this award a number of times. A lot of this to do with Tiffany and her staff. And this is a North American award. So it's a big thing, and I thought we should at least acknowledge that. And I wonder if we're going to get to a point where they're going to ban you from applying, Tiffany. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
That would be awesome. Anything else here? Well, I'll just say, what was it? Where were we? You just been notified. So I know how happy the team is for the work that they've done, being acknowledged that way. So I just think of it as continuous improvement going forward. So yeah, kudos to staff on that accomplishment. That's a hat trick. So we can go for a second hat trick now. Okay, so the motion before us is that items 7.1 through 7.6 listed under the heading of consent agenda for June 5th, 2024 be adopted as recommended. I need a mover, please. Councillor Cates and Councillor Burrs, all in favor? And that is carried. Alrighty, staff reports. The first item up today is our fire chief, who's going to provide an update with respect to the fire master's plan, fire services party master plan. So, floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Council. Through you, Mayor,
since our report back in October of last year on the fire master plan, we've made significant strides in a number of items. So I'm going to showcase those items instead of going through everything. So there's a few of them. So first off, I wanted to briefly talk about the standard of cover, and I wanted to explain that a little more. And that's the acronym SOC. So I added some acronyms in here because the fire service likes to use acronyms for everything. So it's kind of death by acronym. So standard of cover, SOC. So what that really deals with is there's a bunch of different projects, and the recommendations really all tie into that. So one of them is the community risk assessment, and that requirement is for 2024 to have that done. And a copy of that can be submitted to the fire marshal's office, but it is a regulation. So we have that done. That's checked off. That's a big one. Also response modeling and how we're responding and sustainability of the department. That all kind of ties into that standard of cover. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's kind of a brief overview. The next item I want to focus on is our, and the deputy mayor spoke to this a little bit in a past meeting, our wellness program. So our wellness program is, again, there's a bunch of different components to it. So the first one is our decontamination and how we're really taking care of the physical health of our firefighters and managing that for the long term. After a fire, we come out, we have a complete process that we follow to decontaminate our gear, decontaminate our skin, using the research and the science that has taken place over the last decade, and they follow this process, and it keeps them safe that way. The other side of that is the mental health side, which is what the deputy mayor had brought up in one of our last meetings. That's one of the pieces of the wellness program that I know my senior team is very, very adamant about, in making sure that we provide for our firefighters. And as you know, the things that we deal with are a little different than most in the emergency services world. So we have a team of peer supporters, which are taken from all of our 5 stations. We do have a senior oversight, which is basically myself, my deputy, and one of our station chiefs who sits on that peer support team. And they can be deployed at any time, 24/7, to support our staff after a serious event. One example of that was our accident that we had on the highway just outside Bryanston not that long ago. So the peer support team is ready to go, and they're ready to be deployed. So they've been trained by our director, which is a clinical psychologist. And the other piece of that is we do have clinical psychologists on staff, not on staff, but on retainer, to provide a higher level of support for what we do to our staff. And again, that's been deployed on a number of occasions already, and it's been very, very successful, very successful. So that's the wellness program. So we're pretty much done that. We have a couple small components to do, but as you can see, I've added some bold red percentages there. It makes it a little easier to understand kind of where we are on some of these projects. So that is our wellness program. So the second part that I want to talk about is the design of our tendering. So what we did when I took my post here in 2017, 2018, what we did was we designed templates for our trucks. So our tanker trucks, our pumper tanker trucks, our engines, and our rescues. So we've designed, and now the aerial, which we'll be looking at in the future, we designed templates for those. So basically, we know what we want. They're designed, they're ready to go. So once council approves the budget, if they do approve a truck, that goes out to a tender right away within a month, given some small changes that we may have or some reductions to manage budgeting. So those are ready to go, and likewise with the aerial, we do have our template ready to go. Again, that'll be pending council approval when we do come forward with that. That's one of the efficiencies we made. ER bylaw. So now that we have a few things done here that are significant in the establishing regulating bylaw, we'll be coming to council for with a modernized ER bylaw in the future, actually in 2024, once we come forward with our pay grade review, which is the second part of the corporate side of the review. Finally, our report management system. So this is a big one. This was a really big project. So we have, the fire service doesn't have a lot of options for fire management software. In that, we manage our incidents and our reporting and this type of stuff. To date, we've been using I'll tactically say an older type version of software, and we've now moved to a newer version, which is cloud-based, so it can be used anywhere. And it's very successful. We're implementing it in different modules, so there's a lot of different modules that are involved in it. So we use it for everything from training to investigations to inspections to building stock, that side of management for 3 municipalities. We also obviously for incidents and how we manage that. And we also manage all of our assets. So we know exactly what we have, who has it, what's loaned to which person, to manage that and be a little more efficient with what we own and how we budget for what we need. A neat part of this is we in this project we liaised with Strathroy Caradoc Dispatch, who's our dispatch center. And we were able to get a grant and build a server, a computer that shoots the information down to a storage device, and our software will go and grab that information. So basically the firefighters, when they respond, they have that all at their fingertips. They know where they're going, they know the timings when they do the report, saves a lot of time, makes things more efficient, and they have a lot of this information at their fingertips. So that's pretty much it. I had to take any questions that council may have.
Thank you for that presentation, Chief. I'm going to take, we'll table the report now, and then we'll get to questions. So the motion before us is that report FS number 2, 2024, regarding fire services master plan progress update be received for information. Mover, please, and a seconder, Councillor Shipley and Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? And that is, oh, sorry, don't, wait, stop. Hold on. Questions? Oh, yeah, you didn't get a chance to ask your questions yet. So we're tabling this. Anybody want to ask anything before we move on? I don't see any questions. So, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Good report. Now we can move on to Committee of Adjustment, Order and Procedure. And Megan, our Deputy Clerk, is going to present the staff report on that item. She's already in place, so the floor is yours when you're ready, Megan.
Through the chair, good morning, council. The purpose of this report is to provide council with an overview of the Committee of Adjustments, Orders, and Procedures. With the expanding volume and complexity of matters for council to address, it's recommended that council delegate its decision-making authority for minor variance and consent applications to a separate Committee of Adjustment panel. It is prudent that the committee have an order and procedural bylaw that provides framework for how it functions and operates. The composition of the new committee being proposed will consist of 5 ward council representatives, and this group will meet independent from council and exercise their decision-making authority on Committee of Adjustment applications on behalf of Middlesex Centre. The procedural bylaw includes guidance on the following matters: definitions, composition, the calling of hearings, electronic hearings, adjournment, minutes, rules of order, order of business, quorum, and voting. These meetings will be held on the 3rd Wednesday of each month, and they'll begin at 3:30 p.m. and shall adjourn at 5 p.m. And one additional note that I did want to make is that the August 21st meeting will not be taking place, and the attachment within the agenda has now been updated as well. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for that report. Let's table this one. That report CLK number 3, 2023, regarding the Committee of Adjustment, Order and Procedure bylaw be received, and that council approve the draft bylaw appended as 2024 number 49, and that council approve the draft appointing bylaw appended as 2024 number 50, and further that council direct staff to proceed with the establishment of a separate Committee of Adjustment. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Councillor Cates. Sorry?
Questions?
Yeah, okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. I'll look for questions from council on this. I'll start with you, Councillor Burrs, and then I see your hand, Deputy.
The only question I have is why 3:30?
Basically 3:30 so that we would have enough time. As you know, we sometimes do have quite a few consent applications, minor variants. We would also be able to end with enough time to allow council to have some food before we get into the full agenda of the next meeting.
Okay.
Deputy?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's a great idea. And, and, I look forward to seeing the council members, working their way through these. Thank you.
Oops, Councillor Arts.
Through your Madam Mayor to, excuse me, Megan. I've mentioned this before when we were talking about that, like right now we have a council that we've been around the block enough that we can handle it. But I want something in here. So if there's the next council, if there's a lot of newcomers, you just can't throw them into the fire right off the bat. So I assume this is on a year to year or term to term or up for review if necessary, or I don't know how you want to word it, but I want to make for sure that that's in there or assumed. Thank you.
Do I comment, Megan?
Through the chair, we'll definitely take that into consideration and reassess once we have come into a new term council.
And no other questions, then I'll call the vote on that. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. All righty. The next item is employee benefits review, and we have Tiffany Farrell, the Director of Corporate Services and Treasurer, who's going to provide the overview of that report. When you're ready, Tiffany.
So thank you, Interim Mayor DeVee. So the report in front of you is broken off into a bunch of different sections. So I will kind of tackle them individually. And at the end, if you have any questions, I can answer those as well. So the purpose of this report is to inform council of some of the changes that have already occurred as part of our extended health and dental benefit plan, as well as the recommendation to council regarding some proposed enhancements to the plan as well over the next 3 years. So first, I'm going to talk about the changes that have already happened. I won't go into the history of the plan, but if anyone does have questions on how our plan is set up as an administrative services only benefit plan, I can answer those should there be questions. First, some of the changes that have already happened in 2024 is staff was working closely with SelectPath on updating our long-term disability, life insurance, and accidental death and dismemberment coverage and costs. We were under a 3-year contract before with our previous insurance provider, and that was coming due for March 1st, 2024. The increase that they were proposing was significant, and SelectPath on our behalf had worked with some other providers, obtaining some quotes, and was able to secure pricing that was 11.8% lower than the proposed increased premium. SelectPath works on our behalf, and I have to say they do an amazing job, and we're very lucky and fortunate to get this decrease in costs. Insurance costs have been increasing, as we even see it with our other insured products within the municipality. This works very similar. So we pay a premium, and then when it is used, it is paid out on our behalf, and our premiums do increase due to usage. But we're able to guarantee a lower amount for the next 24 months, which is great for the municipality and gives us some consistency, especially with budgeting. Along with the lower rates, SelectPath was able to increase the long-term disability policy coverage up to 75% of an employee's pre-disability monthly income to a maximum set out in the benefit policy. For that maximum amount, it is with medical evidence. So anyone would have to actually apply for that, but it's now an option, which is great for our employees. The second part of the change that has already occurred is a healthcare spending account improvements. So we historically have had 2 cards, one for your health and dental benefits and the other for your healthcare spending account, and would have to submit these separately. This has now been combined into one. So although it's not a financial benefit, it is a benefit for all of our users to have that ease of use. And I do anticipate there be some increased usage now that it's so simple for employees to just check a box if it's not fully covered by our regular health and dental plan, that the healthcare spending account coverage kicks in. So I think that's a positive impact for our employees. And then the third item within the report is looking at some enhancements with respect to our plan. So we started this journey back in 2022 when the municipality passed our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and our supporting strategy. This is something that is important for this municipality, and it aligns with all of our values and what we support in the community as well as for our staff. We took a look at our benefit plan with SelectPath, our benefit broker, in November of 2023 and more in the fall of 2023, identifying some of these gaps. Now, I want to be very clear. DEI starts, so diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, it starts with consistency across the plan, and a one size fits all approach does not work. We can't just pick and choose things in the plan and ignore everything else. And that's what we've tried to address here. With respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion, I want to say that by understanding and being supportive of our staff, others will always have an understanding that everyone will have a different lived experience than our own, and incorporating these experiences with our strategy to support our team members, we can improve as an organization. It's important for us to embrace a culture of DEI and our staff's individual needs, and removing the barriers to increase health and well-being is essential for our healthy organization to thrive, and it's about respecting our team members. Now, I say that with this report, there are aspects that's been broken down into 3 different years, and I want to be very clear that this is the beginning of a journey. This is not the end. We want to hear constant feedback from our employees to continue to improve this so that it is meeting their needs. So in order to actually balance the employee benefits with also fiscal responsibility, it has been broken down into 3 different years, and we've separated different things. So year 1, we're talking about some of the items that are not included in our current benefit plans, those being gender affirmation and treatment or medication for obesity. These benefits are limited to what the CRA and our benefit carrier approves as eligible costs as they're bound by the Income Tax Act. So this is an ever-changing landscape within the benefits community, and there are changes all the time. So we need to follow the provincial and federal guidelines, and this is what we pay our benefits provider to do. We have aligned that $5,000 lifetime maximum for each employee to what we are already providing for our fertility benefits. Fertility benefits have been in our plan for multiple years, I would say at least more than 10 years. And we limit that to $5,000 maximum. So that's where that 5,000 came with. That's where we were trying to align it. The other improvements that we're looking at in 2024 are listed below as well. Smoking cessation products, hearing aids, vision coverage, major restorative dental plans, and orthodontic dental plans. We are tying this into a DEI lens, as well as some are related more to even what's happening within the other lower tiers within our municipality. I've outlined the cost estimates for this, and I do want to remind council and the public that these are just estimates. Some of these items are new to the landscape of benefits, so we do not know what the usage will be. Those would be especially for our newer benefits. We have limited that to staff only at this time. That is something that we're going to continue to monitor with SelectPath to see what the usage actually has been, and more information will come back to council. Same with any of the items that we have outlined as an increase. If we see a significant dollar value being used over the estimate that has been created, we will report that back to council. We had a similar situation in 2016 when we made some changes to our benefit plan and we noticed some spikes. We revisited that in 2017. So we want to make sure that council is aware that this is not a guarantee. We want to make sure that we are being fiscally responsible and watching all of these costs. That would be year 1. In year 2, we're looking at adding that flexibility. So as I mentioned, DEI is an individual journey for everybody. We all have different lived experiences. And so that flexibility is what really matters when you're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion with our benefit plan. The municipality has always, not always, but since 2009, had a healthcare spending account. That adds that flexibility for our employees. What is being recommended for 2025, which would be implemented December 1st, 2024, as that's when the healthcare spending account runs, December 1st to November 30th of each year, is increasing that amount. Once again, I would say that has to be eligible medical expenses as approved under the Income Tax Act. So there is limitations within that and what employees can do. When we were looking at the survey, which I'll speak to in a little bit, you'll notice that there's a wide range of things that employees were looking at. One of the items they mentioned was a personal spending account. They're looking at things outside of what's approved under the Income Tax Act. At this time, that's not part of our recommendation. That's outside employee benefits. It does speak to that wellness aspect, which is extremely important, but we have not tackled that here. So it's not part of our recommendation at this time. And then year three, we are looking at more of like an inflationary cost, but also tying to that employee survey. A lot of the items noted in the employee survey were items that are part of our paramedical group. And so the services listed below are combined into one value that we provide to our employees, and then two of them are separate. Those two are separate due to the usage and the usage trends we've had in the past. And so we have kept those to a smaller amount specifically to those therapies and medical treatments. So what we are looking at for May 1st or March 1st, 2026 is an increase that's more related to an inflationary increase in these services. And it does respond to the staff survey of what our team members are looking for. Once again, that is the financial estimate is based on an estimate, and we will continue to watch what those costs look like. So at the end, I have summarized what the overall costs are. I am recommending that the funds for this, the enhancements to our benefit plan, get funded from our Employee Benefits Reserve Fund, which we've been building for the last, since I want to say 2011. It now sits at $363,473.64, and it is to be used according to the discretionary reserve fund policy for employee benefits or things that benefit our employees. And the other aspect that I wanted to bring forward to council's attention was, even with that balance, $42,903 is based on just interest income earned on that. So even applying just the interest income and not the principal that we put away, we can cover the majority of these enhancements based on the estimates. However, once again, those are just estimates. And at this point, I will open it up to council for any questions.
But before we do that, we have a motion to table. It's kind of long. Do you want me to read it? Should I go through it? Yeah. Okay. So I'll start at the top. So the first one is that report CPS 36/2024 be received, and that council approves the enhancements to the benefit program as outlined in the regular report for employee benefit plan number 11418A and B for July 1st, 2024. And that council approves the enhancements to the benefit program as outlined in the report for the employee benefit plan number 11418A and B for December 1st, 2024. And that council approves the enhancements for the benefit program as outlined in the report below for employee plan benefit 114A and B for March 1st, 2026. And further, that the Director of Corporate Services be directed to budget for the use of the Employee Benefits Reserve Fund in the 2025 and 2026 budgets for $18,666.72 and $27,909.72 respectively to fund these improvements. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Brennan, Councillor Burrs, and I'm going to open it up for questions, comments. We'll start with you, Councillor Burrs.
So it's a good report. I think we're in the right groove with the administrative services only. The only question I have is, Select Path is our consultant, so to speak. So they look outside what is happening in other municipalities. Correct, Tiffany? And are we competitive? And then we survey our own staff to see, does our plan meet their needs? And I mean, we're not gonna entertain everything everybody wants, but we're very competitive. So can you affirm what I just said?
Yep. So through you, Mayor DeVete. So yeah, Select Path is our benefits broker, and they act on our needs or on our behalf. And they do compare our benefit plan to others within the lower tiers as well as outside that. So they don't only represent municipalities; they represent those in the public sector or private sector as well as the public sector. There are some areas where they're looking at their other clients that they have recommended. One of those items was our vision. Our vision was at $400. In looking at some of our comparators, there's I think it was $450, $500, $570. And so they have provided us that data. That's kind of what they do on our behalf as well. And they do all like the negotiation when it comes to like actually looking at our insured products.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That answers my.
And I have Councillor Arts.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Tiffany. Most of this stuff I can follow. Some stuff I'm a little confused on. Under the DEI, it says coverage for certain gender affirming procedures not covered by provincial territory health plans. So so I asked what would this be? And nobody's quite for sure what procedures we might cover that OHIP doesn't. So I'm always a little leery if I don't understand everything. So for me to approve this, you said that we would do a review. So I would like to know, right now, nobody knows what the procedures we're talking about. So I would like down the road to know if we finally figure out what we know. Thanks.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor DeVete, that is a great question. With respect to the gender affirmation, there are some procedures or costs associated with that are not currently covered by the provincial and the federal plans. But it is something that I know, in talking with Select Path, I have relayed some of the questions on this, and they did mention that provincial health coverage is always evolving. So at this point, and it is a very individual journey. So I think it does depend on the individual and what their needs are in that affirmation journey for themselves. And so the one thing I would mention, we can definitely come back and report back with more information as it becomes available. But I would like to say that anything that would be approved is approved medical expenses under the income tax. So it already has to meet that level. And that's where our benefit provider, they monitor all of that for us on our behalf. So it would be meeting that. It just might not be at the provincial and federal, they might not cover certain things. Very similar to a lot of the other type of programs. So for like the dental program with the province, they don't cover all dental expenses. And so it doesn't mean it's not a legitimate expense or that it's kind of like it's part of the medical definition under the Income Tax Act. They don't cover it. They don't provide that funding. So a lot of people are out of pocket for that. So that would be a very, like, just looking at it benefit wise, that's what they're referring to. There are other, this is one of the items that is being added into benefit plans now, and it's happening more often as we have this changing landscape in the provinces and the federal government are providing more information, but I do think it's something that we'll continue to learn about over time. But I can definitely report back. I think it is very important for council to understand what the benefits are covering. And when we're having that usage, and you'll see those usage rates, we can provide some of that more information, even like how it kind of breaks down. So we do see that as staff. We do not see it based on an individual. That is never identified. However, we do see what the trends would be. So we would know like our highest, what's our highest value for drugs, our dental usage, our vision coverage, and anything to do with the paramedicals. So that is information that we can bring back. And I can look to see if Kevin, who would be more of an industry expert than myself, can provide some information to council as well and have him come to do a delegation, because I feel like it's been a little while anyway. So it might be nice for even newer members of council to meet Kevin.
All good? Councillor Shipley?
So through the mayor, just to clarify, Tiffany, the 5,000, we don't know what it's going to be used for at this point then.
Yes, to clarify, it can be very different for each person, but it would have to fall under the gender affirmation like services or procedures, and then also have to be approved by the federal government and included as a medical expense in the Income Tax Act. I know there are things, and I'm not an expert with respect to just different procedures and what parts covered, and maybe it's only up to a certain amount with the provincial healthcare. I'm not 100% sure, but it would be related to that. It can't be cosmetic surgery or so cosmetic surgery is outside our plan for anything, like it's not included. So yes, we unfortunately you're right. I don't know all of the details to it, but it would be something that our benefit carrier understands what we want to provide this benefit to our team members. They would manage that.
I guess I'm gonna be honest, I have a problem giving $5,000 and we don't know what we're getting. It's like Christopher Phelan asking for $2 billion for a company that doesn't exist. So I just like to know how we can get that information prior to approving the $5,000.
Do you want to take that, Tiff?
So through Mayor to be, So we wouldn't have anyone do like a pre-authorization before they do it. That is something I can pose to Kevin to see if that is like an option. I know with, say, when we're looking at the treatment and medications for obesity, that is a full-on treatment plan. And normally if someone's in the journey of gender affirmation, I know there is like, it is a process. So it would be specified in that. And maybe that is something that RAM already, RAM is our benefits provider, would already be obtaining anyways to ensure that, because I know with the obesity one, it is a doctor approved plan. It's not, so they would be getting that medical information before any kind of approval. So there could be very something similar for this benefit as well.
So just to be clear, you're saying the Income Tax Act is the umbrella. Yeah, you're not making, I mean, those things are all identified and only certain things would be considered. They have to fall within that scope. What it is may vary, but the interpretation comes from there.
Yeah, so through your mayor to be, yes, exactly. So it does all have to fall under the Income Tax Act. Those done by the federal government, that's the expert. And that goes for like anything, say like fertility, the aspects of what we provide. I know there's I believe in the past it's like one round provided by the provincial government, and then we provide a $5,000 benefit to our employees. And I believe some of that goes to drugs or maybe storage. But it can be a variety of items because everyone's journey within that fertility can also be very different. And so, yes, it's like a $5,000 umbrella, but it's specific for that. There's nothing, it would have to be approved under the Income Tax Act as a medical expense.
Other questions? Okay. In that case, there is a motion before us. I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you for that report. A lot to digest there. Moving on now to number 9. There are no notices of motion for this meeting. We can look to correspondence. There are 5 items here. Yes, Deputy Mayor Brennan.
10.3 from the Solicitor General's office. I just want to comment how disappointed I am. They've told us we have to have a free services board. They tell us, yep, and that we have to have the training. So it would have been beneficial, I think, to have everybody in the room and have someone come from the solicitor's office to train us. But they've decided in their wisdom to do it online, which doesn't offer us the opportunity to ask questions or anything else. So I just want to make that point that I'm very disappointed that they can't afford to spend 3 hours with us to properly train us and have questions asked. I'm very disappointed in that. Thank you.
So, Councillor Arts.
Madam Mayor, I've got some, I don't know whether questions, issues with 10.4, the concept brief to establishment of an environmental and sustainable committee. It showed up with no letterhead. Nobody signed it. So I did a bit of research and it hasn't, I don't think it's been an approved committee by North Middlesex. It's just sort of a fact-finding mission. So I'm not in favor of it. I just think we've got enough people telling us what to do already. Thank you.
I think that I'll ask Michael to comment on that, if you will.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through the mayor to Councillor Arts and Council. The municipality received an invite from one of the local council members from North Middlesex. We can't confirm whether or not it's an established committee of council. We can confirm that they are leading this initiative. And so they've extended an invite to Middlesex Center along with a number of other area municipalities. I understand they did have their first coming together last week, and it seems to have gone well. And it's something that it's a working group that they want to continue. So whether or not it's a formal committee or whether it's a task force, at the end of the day, we've been invited to participate, and it's up to council as to whether or not they'd like to send a representative or not. From a staff resource perspective, we had one member who is interested, who may be attending to learn and share information back to us.
Yes, Councillor Bruce.
Through you, Your Worship. I think we should attend just to see what's going on, but no commitment until it's presented to council. They're injecting themselves as another link. I don't know if that's going to fly or not, but it doesn't hurt to show up and listen and then make a decision. But Yeah, I think it's good that you brought this up. We just didn't think to bring this out, okay?
Is there anything else anyone wants to comment on? No, in that case, we do have a motion before us. And that is for the Council of Municipality of Middlesex Centre to receive the correspondence items number 10.1 through 10.5 listed on the June 2024 agenda as information. Mover, please. Councillor Heffernan and Councillor Cates, thank you. All in favor? And that is received. I'm going to look to Deputy Mayor Brennan to provide an update on the last county council meeting.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We received a report. There's going to be a new roof required on the Strathmere Lodge, which is 1.6 million before taxes. So it's a large roof, big area, and it's getting to the point where it's starting to leak, and some of the insulation underneath the roof is starting to get wet. So really needs, they did a repair of approximately 79,000 when they found an area that was leaking a bit to try to stop that from the insulation getting wet, but the whole roof needs to be replaced, so that's going to have to go forward. We approved an asset retirement obligations financial policy. Mayor DeVete, or Warden DeVete, is being nominated for a director position on the NEMO board again from 2024 to 2026, and from further conversation with the warden, apparently there's 3 or 4 people who put the name forward, so she will be running an election to get that nomination, and we wish you the best of luck in that process. We received a planning reform bill 185 and proposed provincial planning statement, cutting red tape to build more homes. We talked about that. We received a mid-year update from the CAO, service plan for the London Middlesex Child Care and Early Years Service System Plan for 2024 to 2028. There is quite a list of people waiting to get their child into the early learning years. It's quite a popular program. The golf tournament for the Warden's Golf Tournament is coming up June the 18th. We spent a fair amount of time talking about development charges. The county is looking at implementing. There is a public meeting on June 26th for anybody that wants to go and hear more about it and find out more about it. Our next meetings are June 25th, July 16th, and August 13th.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Okay, we don't have any of that. That's a great report. Moving on to other businesses. Anything pressing? Nope. Okay. In that case, we can move on to bylaws. The motion before us is that bylaws 2024 number 48 through 52 listed on the June 5th, 2024 council agenda be adopted as printed. And I need a mover, please. Councillor Shipley and Councillor Arts. Thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. And then we have a motion that the council for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre adjourns the June 5th council meeting at 10:54 a.m. Councillor Burrs, thank you, and Councillor Cates, all in favor. And we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.